I'm Matt Geary, Superintendent of the Manchester Public Schools. Welcome to the February edition of MPS Pride. Today's show focuses on the 2015-2016 Superintendent's recommended budget for the next school year. Today we'll have guests from the central office and also building level leaders who will talk about programming in the areas of curriculum and instruction, in pupil services and technology that have cost drivers that impact our budget. And so we hope that the viewers today will get a good idea of the planning and thoughtfulness that went into producing what we believe is a responsible budget that will be used to fund the schools in 2015-16. Our next guest on MPS Pride, this budget edition of MPS Pride, is Dr. Santasha Oliver, Director of STEAM. Dr. Oliver, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And so there are some STEAM priorities in our budget, and I wonder if you could share with our audience some of the priorities as we head into 2015-16 in the area of STEAM.
Absolutely. First and foremost, I would say one of our major initiatives would be the addition of 18 new science specialists at the elementary level. We're very excited about this potential addition. We believe that this addition would place a renewed focus on science at the elementary level. At the current time, I would say that the district has certainly had a district-wide focus on English language arts and mathematics. However, we certainly value the importance of educating the whole child, and we strongly believe that science would be part of this well-rounded education, and as such should really be reflected in the budget. And so we're looking toward grant funding to support the addition of those 18 new science teachers. They would be content area specialists, which would be something new for the district, where we have certified specialists with science backgrounds. And this is actually very important because soon we'll be looking at new standards, science standards and practices in the state of Connecticut. And so we feel that it's vital to have teachers with that science, that content background to help us transition towards these new science standards as well as teaching practices. In addition, the new science specialists could potentially provide time for our existing elementary teachers to collaborate during professional learning communities. And this is also important because it supports our Manchester Public Schools belief system with excellence, creativity, and collaboration. So in short, I would say that the addition of the 18 new science elementary specialists would be a major budget initiative for the department. Again, the content area expertise will allow us to transition towards next generation science standards, to incorporate more student-centered teaching practices like inquiry-based teaching and learning, and also provide much needed collaboration time for teachers, especially at the elementary level, because as you're aware, our elementary teachers teach all content areas. I would say other major initiatives that would come under the new budget would also include textbooks at the middle level. We're looking at mathematics textbooks for Illing Middle School, as well as purchasing a core instructional resource at the elementary level.
That's great. And so the textbooks, you talk about textbooks, would those have digital versions of the textbook? Talk me through that.
Absolutely. So at this point in time, we're actually in the very beginning stages of looking at textbooks. So we've contacted a couple of vendors. Textbooks have been shipped and are in process of being shipped out to Illing, where we have a team that will review those textbooks. But certainly an electronic component would be a vital aspect, considering our one-to-one initiative that we've implemented over the last year, where our middle and high school students have access to a Chromebook. So some sort of electronic component would certainly be an important factor in our consideration.
That's great. Let me go back to the science specialists. So you mentioned those would be grant funded. Can you talk about maybe training for the science specialists? That would be Board of Ed funded. What would that training look like for these science folks?
Absolutely. I would envision most likely a 3-year training cycle. So in year one, actually before they even start working with students, I would recommend that they are trained by by the Connecticut Science Center. There's an Inquiry Teaching and Learning Workshop series that will focus in on more student-centered techniques. There's a framework, and so they'll learn that framework in year one. Over the course of year one, they'll have the opportunity to implement that framework. They'll look at the existing curriculum and then look to see how we can shift existing activities and practices to be more student-centered or inquiry-based. Then in year two, they'll go back. So there are also follow-up days as well. But in year two, they'll go back, and then so it's the next level. And then in year three, they would be, for the most part, inquiry certified or trained, and they'll actually even be eligible to receive graduate course credits.
Wow, that's great. One more question. So we've got some exciting programming going on this year in STEAM, and I wondered if you would share a little bit about the ongoing effort in robotics and potentially the expansion of the science fair with the viewers at home.
Oh, absolutely. So we're very excited to partner with the townwide PTA this year. So we're actually supporting the 4th annual science fair. We have school science fairs that will take place at all elementary schools. We have 9 elementary schools along with our grade 6 Bennett Academy. And then the winners from the school science fairs will advance to our district-wide science fair, which will be held on Saturday, March 21st. And then new to the district this year is Invention Convention. So we will have a small subset of students that will go on to share their inventions at the statewide competition at UConn, which will take place on Saturday, May 2nd at the Gampool Pavilion. So again, we're very excited. We've actually expanded our science fair to include school-level science fairs and the statewide Invention Convention competition.
That's great. Well, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
All right. Our next guest today is Assistant Superintendent for Pupil Services, Shelley Mathis. Mrs. Mathis, thank you for joining us today. As you know, the superintendent's recommended budget has 2.0 additional special education teachers and 1.4 additional preschool teachers. Could you tell us a little bit about the reason for those requests and what they would fill?
Okay, thank you for having me here, by the way. As far as the preschool positions, presently we have 350 children enrolled in our preschool program. This is about a 50-child enrollment higher than last year at this point in time. Our preschool programs are located at the preschool center, which we have integrated program for children with and without special needs, as well as the Head Start program there of 9 classrooms. We also have preschool integrated programming at Buckley and at Keeney. Keeney is a new addition this year. Typically around this time of year, we have around 135 preschoolers, but we're running close to 175 preschoolers. And one thing with early childhood, with children with special needs, they come into preschool on or before their birthdays. So we are looking forward to having many more little friends join us before the end of the school year. So one of the reasons why we're looking for the increased teachers is the .4 is at the preschool center. Presently, they're not in a full-day programming, and we feel that there's a need for them to have full-day programming, so when they move on to the big K of kindergarten, which is a little bit challenging, as full day, that they tend to struggle. So we're looking for that increased enrollment there. And the other is for our integrated program. It's hard to believe when I started doing preschool 8 years ago, I had 2 classes. I now have 7. And the population is really booming. So that's where we're looking for that increased programming for there. For special education teachers, one of the things this year we are piloting is a co-taught kindergarten class over at Robertson. And once again, some of these young learners, when they move on to this full day, they are struggling. So we're looking at possibly piloting that in other elementary schools, as well as our elementary special education learning center teachers have rather large caseloads. And with their large caseloads, they can't get in to do that inclusive model that we know that would benefit all learners. So that's really where we're looking at for those additional teachers.
That's great. Can you tell me, in terms of preschool enrollment, just to clarify for people at home, because universal preschool is a big topic coming up, and obviously we don't have universal preschool in Manchester. The number you cited at the very beginning, that includes 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds?
That includes 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds. The program has children with and without special needs, and then children under intervention plans that we're just kind of on the cusp and feel that they need some intervention before moving on to kindergarten.
Got it. Great. My next question would be, we know that certainly we want to be able to provide all the support that our students with disabilities have. We also know that sometimes that can be expensive. And so can you tell us a little bit about all of the factors that impact the special education budget, particularly the ones that might be larger cost drivers?
Okay, well, the largest cost driver actually is tuition, which probably isn't a surprise to most. And it's tuition in for approved private special education programs, our magnet schools, and our charter schools. We actually have less students in any of these specialized programs, particularly approved private programs, but the cost of them keeps going up every single year, so that tuition bottom line doesn't seem to change. What does change quite a bit is the magnet school enrollment, because we're responsible fiscally for any of the students in magnet schools. As far as their special education plans, we oversee them, write their IEPs, and if they require any specialized one-to-one para support, the magnet school hires them, but they bill us for that person plus their benefits. So that's an unknown. We don't know each year how many students are going into magnet schools. As well as the charter school that we have in town, we're responsible for the students at the charter school as far as their special education costs, and then we also send the related services, speech, OT, and counseling over there. So that's another cost to our budget as staffing, because some staff members are split between some of our schools and there as well. Another cost factor is DCF placements. We have, as people know, a number of group homes and shelters within town, and DCF placements where some students come and have some particular challenges and might be an approved private special education school, and we become responsible for that as well. There is a state reimbursement. However, the reimbursement still doesn't cover all of the costs. There's a fraction of the costs based on a formula. The other two things we have in our district is oftentimes we have various consultants coming on board to help with some of the specialized unique learning needs, particularly around behavior, sometimes academic challenges. Right now we have a few in some of the different buildings to support not just identified students with special needs, but for all students. And the other big cost, I think, is specialized evaluations. Sometimes that we have a number of those, and as the year goes on, you see that the cost gets driven up by that.
And we know you work very hard to keep students in district. We have a couple unique programs here in Manchester. Can you talk to me about the Manchester Transition Center for our 18 to 21-year-old students, and so give the people at home a little bit of information on that, as well as our clinical day program, Manchester Regional Academy. Could you give us a couple minutes on each of those?
Absolutely. Manchester Transition Center is quite a program. It's for students who are 18 to 21 with moderate disabilities, and it's based in the community. Actually, before forming that program, a group of us went and visited various programs throughout the state. Some are located in colleges, a storefront, different places around town. And we met with a consultant from Maryland as we devised this program. Right now, we have a vocational counselor there part-time, a school social worker spends some time there, and a wonderful teacher who has created such great opportunities for students. We also have, they're located in Center Congregation Church, and then we have another location as an apartment on Main Street. And people go, oh no, an apartment, like they're staying there. No, but they are learning bed making, and they're learning laundry and basic cooking and daily living skills there as well. So we have around 16 students, and they're spend time in various locations. We also are most fortunate to have a student tuition to us from another town, so that's very exciting because it shows that our program is really well-known and resourceful for students. Manchester Regional Academy is our clinical program. We have approximately 75 students. 22 come to us on a tuition basis from various towns, grades 7 through 12. There's a full-time school psychologist and 2 social workers there, and it's based on a level system. The academic rigor is really moving along there, and as well as the behavior component. There's a mediation center, and we call the person there who's the international peacemaker because he seems to be able to mediate almost all concerns, as well as some really fine, dedicated teachers. They look at more of a co-teaching model so that students transition between 2 teachers as their case managers.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
All right. Our next guest today on MPS Pride is Director of Teaching and Learning for Humanities, Dr. Scott Ratchford. Thank you for joining us today.
Great to be here.
Would you tell the viewers at home a little bit about the work in the area of humanities that, and the cost drivers that are included in the 2015-16 proposed budget?
Sure. So probably the biggest area that we have been working on has been in building a solid core curriculum for K through 12 in terms of literacy, which includes both the reading, and the writing sides of the equation. And so with that work, really trying to take and move beyond the Common Core standards and making sure that there is good curriculum that teachers know is sequenced well and that really has the right information about best practices included in it. So that's part of the work this year and will continue next year. But in addition to that, we are particularly looking at how we can anchor in a good understanding of what a literacy block, a balanced literacy block looks like. And in that work, that would be a block which would include both time for students to be given direct instruction around everything from basic foundation reading skills to more higher level comprehension skills. On the writing side, similarly, it would be sort of discrete skills around core author's craft and writing elements that students need to learn, and then room for students to have time for guided practice and an independent practice. And trying to merge sort of an older model around just more direct instruction and trying to bring in a workshop approach would be some of the areas where our teachers have been developing their understanding, and also bringing in some folks who can help support that work. So the teachers are not just reading about it through a curriculum, they're actually having consultants available to work with them. We've had consultants from the University of Connecticut, as well as bringing in an organization that's nationally and done actually I think some international work, Lit Life, to do some work with teachers around how to bring that to the next level. So that would be part of the work. In addition to that, for that to really be successful, we have to shift our model for what classrooms include in terms of text available to students, so that students have a range of texts, not just level text, but different authors and different topics, fiction, nonfiction, so that it really engages students, pulls them beyond where they might feel like they're comfortable, so they can do some supported practice and really stretch themselves as readers. That's going to require us to build classroom libraries that are more extensive for teachers. You think about ourselves as adult readers, we want to have a range of books, and some of us are more, magnetized by some types of writing than others. So those are the biggest areas within literacy and the language arts side. On the other side of the humanities coin, we have work we're doing in social studies. And social studies, the state has embraced a new curriculum that they're calling C3. The two C's you would recognize from the Common Core, which would be college and career ready. The third is around citizenship. And they're really trying to embed the principles around what a good citizen is right in the core curriculum. So trying to look at that curriculum really from a K through 12 sequence, and what do we want students to be able to grapple with? What kinds of questions do we want them to be able to answer as young adults or as they move into young adulthood? So building that curriculum more thoroughly and trying to make sure that it's actually something that we would want to integrate some of with our curriculum in the literacy side, so that some of the materials would be out of social studies.
Well, great. Well, thank you very much for the information.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us
All
today.
right. Thank you.
All right.
Good to be here.
Our next guest today is Diane Sheehan Burns, principal of Highland Park Elementary School. Diane, thank you for joining us today.
You're welcome.
Diane, could you just share with the viewers at home your process for building a budget at your school level, and then some of the priorities specific to Highland Park, but also generally for elementary principals and schools in Manchester?
So in building a budget, I generally pull my instructional leadership team together. So that would consist of literacy coach, math coach, library media specialist, and we take a look at the areas that we're budgeting for, what our needs might be for that particular year, any special programming that might be new to the school that year, and what resources do we already have, what resources would we need. So that's generally a very quick version of how we're building our budget. With Highland, being that it's in a unique situation because it's 3 years old, we opened our doors with state-of-the-art pretty much everything. Technology, smart boards, Elmos, Sensonic speakers upstairs with all the intermediate classrooms, so the teachers have wireless mics. We had quite a few. We had a computer lab that consisted of just shy of 40 PCs, and then we had two cows, computers on wheels, that each housed about 36 laptops. And then this year we were able to acquire more technology, so we have kindergarten classrooms that now have iPads We have a certain number for every classroom. We brought the Chromebooks, the district brought the Chromebooks down to 5th grade, so 5th grade has an additional set of Chromebooks. I want to say, let's say 40 plus Chromebooks for them to share. So for Highland, when we're looking at what of our needs, especially with regards to the technology, it's really around the hardware of it and what would need to be replaced. So one of the biggest cost items would be the bulbs. So for all of the bulbs that are used for smartboards, when those bulbs go, it's about $250 a bulb. So we're looking at our budget to say, you know, how much money are we going to need, and then do we have a cycle? Because there isn't a cycle of implementation. It was all. So you have essentially 18 classrooms with that technology. So that's, you know, that's one of the challenges that we have in budgeting.
Gotcha. Talk to me about instructional supply needs in math or literacy, any work you do in that kind of budgeting?
Well, I can honestly say that the district is outstanding when it comes to supporting classrooms, buildings with resources. Manchester's always been very strong with that. So this year specifically, with the work that the district did last year around guided math, the district purchased the resource for teachers around the book itself, and then lesson plans and whatnot that helps the teachers move gradually into setting up guided math in the classroom. Number Talks was a new resource that was brought into the district this year. Again, we had professional development last year and then again this year for the district. So classroom teachers and the math coach, really the last 2 years have been participating in that. So the Number Talks is all about supporting mental math. So that resource is just essentially, you know, a problem on a board. So there isn't a lot of money that comes with the need for that, but it's a strategy in and of itself that is proving to be really effective in strengthening kids' ability to be fluent, you know, with their math facts and teaching teachers a new way to present and strengthen students' automaticity with fluency for that. And then for the resources for guided math, some of the resources the district did purchase for teachers to put into centers, and others we've ordered, you know, as a building to take a look at, well, what are our needs? And we have 15 classrooms, so you know, we looked at budgeting some extra resources to be putting into the workstations for there.
Great. Well, thank you very much for sharing
You're
your
welcome.
information.
Thank you.
Have a good afternoon.
You too.
All right, our next guest this afternoon is Dr. Amy Atticus, Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum and Instruction. Amy, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So the recommended budget for the Board of Education includes additional staffing in ELL services. It's 1.0 certified teachers, and although we also are aware that there's ELL staffing in the Alliance grant, could you talk to us about the need for both the additional staffing and the existing staffing that's really only been in place for a couple years?
Sure. I think I look towards the mission for Manchester Public Schools that we would be adequately providing the equal opportunity for all of our students to be successful. And then when we look at actual data to support that need, is that in the last 2 years we would look at our ELL population and graduation rates, and noticing that out of all of the groups of students who actually go through the halls of Manchester High School, ELL students are less likely to graduate. That number actually, and percentage of students, is actually decreasing while our others are increasing. So if we want to have equitable experiences for all students, we would also need to make sure we have high quality teachers and supports to support those types of students. And so that would be why we have that need for an extra teacher. It really only brings us up to 3.28 or 3.8 people. And for a district our size, knowing also at the elementary level that we have the very large numbers of students who are not native speakers of English, it's just a step in the right direction, but also one that I would think would be monitored with diligence, so that we make sure that we keep those numbers where they need to be for staffing.
Okay. And the board budget, the recommended budget from the superintendent, has significant increases in both professional development and in consultants. Can you explain sort of what would our priorities be in the area of professional development and what the district might use consultants for?
Sure. Professional development, many people think it's just for teachers. It would be for all staff, including administrators, I think, to build their own capacity. In the area of professional development, we've had to look at basically curricular work. I believe Dr. Ratchford spoke earlier about what we needed to do in the area of literacy, and Dr. Oliver spoke about what we've been doing in math, which is really the two curricular areas we've worked most this past year.
We also have science that needs to be brought up to speed. And so in looking at the budget for the next academic year, it's also to bring in professional development for science. Examples of that could be anywhere from having teachers work in PLCs within their classrooms. So that's professional development where we have outside people assisting, but also our administrators where we would have some work having to go along with building our own capacity as leaders. And I think that's where we look at the group that we're using right now, which is a management group that works with executive leadership in building the capacity of our leaders. It's not one aspect of a district that needs to be strengthened, it's the entire district. So that's why I would have to hone in on that piece about consultants to help administrators as well.
Great. And also an increase in instructional supplies, specifically in the areas of textbooks and also testing. So could you talk us through the need for additional instructional supplies, and then why textbooks sort of in this digital age, what we mean by textbooks, and testing also with an increase?
Sure. I think one thing that I found interesting in coming to this district was that there were only two budgets, one for English language arts and one for mathematics when I came. So science and social studies did not have an actual budget, so that we've tried to actually make sure that those four areas, large content areas, have their own budget so that when we're working throughout the year we can actually do, I think, a great job in looking at what do we need to spend and on what. You mentioned the two areas of instructional supplies, which are definitely textbooks. Textbooks are one area in which they're also digitalized. So when you're buying a textbook, you want to make sure that the textbooks that we purchase also have licenses that will update either annually or biannually when they make updates. So in the years when I went to school, or even yourself, you had a hard textbook, and using a digital form wasn't around. So we do have instances, especially at the high school next year, where we do have several class sets of the hard textbooks that are within our budget, and that was done very planfully with the current principal of the high school, Jill Krieger. The other piece that you spoke about was testing, and testing actually takes two sort of routes. We're in the mix of having a new state assessment, the Smarter Balance Assessment, and then looking at what do we do in the interim, because that's only one point of the year. So as an Alliance district, knowing that we need to monitor how students grow and develop along a continuum, we do presently pay for what's called NWEA, and we do use that assessment K through 10, and it does come at a considerable cost. And so re-looking at whether or not that's going to be a need when the state has opened its own interim assessments, it may be a portion of the budget that we can readjust later, but right now we cannot make that decision.
Okay, great. Well, thank you very much for the information.
It was nice meeting you. Have a good day.
Our next guest today is Director of Technology, Carney. Carrie, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So the district currently supports a one-to-one initiative in grades 6 through 12. Can you talk us through how that was initially funded, and then our plan as a district to sustain that with the board funding over time?
Right. So as you know, we've had two phases for our one-to-one rollout. Last year, we were rolling out our 9 to 12 part of the initiative, and that was funded through a grant through the Nellie Mae Corporation, and it supported our work that we were already doing within the district in terms of supporting student learning and engagement. And this year, with our 6 to 8 students, we have supported the one-to-one initiative again with funding from the Alliance grant, and going forward that will increasingly fall more and more on the board budget, but we have enough devices in play right now, 6 through 12, where it's a much smaller piece than trying to get 3 grade levels up and running at the same time. That being said, we've been very happy with the level of engagement in the one-to-one program, pretty much as each phase has rolled out. As soon as we get the devices into the hands of the students and the staff, they're beginning to create, collaborate, communicate with one another, and it's a great starting point for a one-to-one initiative.
That's great. And tell us about the technology, say, pre-K through grade 5.
Well, right now, and I think it was alluded to by some of the other people on the show so far, we have iPads in grade K, and that's supporting the K Play initiative. Students at that level learn best by playing, and the iPad is a great device for play. In the 1 through 4 range across our district, we have 5 laptops per classroom, and those are used to support student centers and our numeracy and literacy initiatives throughout the district. And at grade 5, what we did that was interesting is we took the devices from the graduating seniors last year and we distributed them throughout the grade 5 classrooms in the district. And what that allowed was really a 1 to 2, if you will, one device per every 2 students. And that has been very well received. So much so that the 5th graders would like to go 1-to-1 and the 4th grade is agitating for it too.
That's good. Sounds like a lot of energy and enthusiasm around
Yes.
that. I think people often think of devices as the primary item that we purchase with technology funds, and certainly devices make up a significant amount of that money. Could you talk to us about other cost drivers in the district technology budget?
Certainly. So we could have all the student devices we wanted, but if we didn't have a healthy, robust infrastructure to support it, it wouldn't get us very far. So the district technology budget goes to support the wired and wireless infrastructure, wires, switches, you name it, throughout the district and all of the buildings. And what that allows us to do is to have programs like a 1-to-1 initiative. It allows us to support the state testing and meet the demands of the systems infrastructure. And really that's where the budget is used to support. We've got human resources applications such as Applitrak's, such as Munis, that allow us to support the district systems. For human resources, we have pupil services. We support the program that kind of allows people to collaborate around IEPs and share their information. So the district technology budget, beyond the physical infrastructure, also supports the different departments' needs in terms of the operations, the daily operations of the district. So for human resources, that looks like our Munis program and our Applitrak's program, which allow us to have a better handle on how we serve the people who are serving our students. We support pupil services by the IEP Plus program, which is one of the ways that we allow our staff to work together and collaborate on IEPs. Curriculum and instruction is supported through the student management service, student information system that we use at each of the schools, and that allows us to have ready access to the information we need for our students. It also is what we use to grade and keep track of our students' progress throughout the year. And so those are just a few of the programs that the technology budget supports, but it really shows how we're here to support the work of the school and the district.
That's great. Well, sounds like a lot of work underway. Very exciting stuff. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much.
All right. Our next guest is Patricia Brooks, Assistant to the Superintendent for Finance and Management. Thank you for joining us, Mrs. Brooks.
Thank you for inviting me,
Mrs.
Mr.
Brooks
Carey.
plays a key role in oversight of the budget, and wondered if you could talk to us today about the increase in certified salaries, or the salary line overall.
Salary line overall is increased due to contract negotiations. We had 5 unions negotiate new contracts this year, some of them effective July 1st, 2015. We also have 5.4 new positions in the budget for a total of $284,000 in certified salaries.
Could you tell us a little bit about benefits? What looked to be unusual was a significant savings in insurance costs. Could you talk to us about the reason for the savings, and then are we going to see this costs go up significantly next year?
Well, fortunately, Manchester is self-insured, so based on our experience or on our claims in a prior year determines our rate increase for the next year. Our rate increase only went up 4% next year, which is unheard of usually. And we have new cost shares that were negotiated in the contracts for the 5 unions that we did negotiate. And our administrators took the high deductible plan starting July 1st, 15, which saved the district a good amount of money. We also had 22 of our employees drop the Manchester Public Schools health insurance plan, and 11 of them changed from a family plan to a single plan.
Oh, that's great. It's good news for the savings. One other line we see that's increasing is Kelly Contracted Services, and they do our subs. Can you tell us the reason for the increase in the Kelly sub line?
Actually, there's 2 changes in that line item for next year. Number 1, Kelly Services does provide us with our daily substitutes. They provide a fill rate of about 95% with qualified employees in those positions. We increased the payment our substitutes will receive from $77 to $87.50 a day to remain competitive in our Hartford County area. Also, next year, and beginning this year, we will be contracting with a substitute service to provide qualified substitutes for our paraprofessionals. This is an area where we need someone qualified and trained when our paraprofessionals, or paraeducators as they are now known, are not in for a day.
That's good. That sounds well thought out. Can you describe for us, as you know, we've passed a building referendum in November and are moving forward with some buildings. Also, though, are seeing in our budget increases in both capital improvements and capital repairs. Can you talk about both the capital improvement line and the capital repair line and what kinds of things, broadly we hope to do with that money?
Well, as you know, the projects are a few years off before we'll enjoy the full benefit of all the projects. In the meantime, we do have to maintain our 15 buildings. Capital repairs is part of Policy 3510, Board Policy 3510, which designates that we place a certain amount of the budget into this account for emergency repairs on capital equipment, a boiler going down, a roof needing repair, a burst pipe. And the current board policy is for 0.25% of the budget. We have asked for an increase from the board of 0.35% of the budget. As you know, costs have increased, and this policy's been in effect quite a few years without an increase. Capital projects is to do a capital project within the district. This follows the same designation as the federal government recognizes. It's repair or alterations to an existing asset. So if we needed to install a new boiler or put on a new roof, also we've done some parking lot redos and some chimney stack redos in the district, and that would all come under capital projects.
Very good. Well, thank you, Mrs. Brooks. I'm sure the people at home will be glad to know we're maintaining our buildings. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
All right. Our next guest is High School Principal Jill Krieger. Jill, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
Jill, could you talk to us about your process for developing a high school budget? Obviously, we have a large high school. It's a large budget. Tell us about the process for budget development and then any cost drivers that might impact your budget this year.
Certainly. You're right, we do have a big high school with lots of departments. So our process of building a budget, it takes a lot of effort and a lot of people. So each department chair provides me with information on their needs this particular year, and that could include textbooks, everything imaginable. They give me that information. I put it into a broader-based budget. We also have a budget for Bentley, and we have a big athletic budget. So our budget is very complicated and involved. One of the things we've put into our budget this year that we're really excited about is a program we have here called Saturday Algebra. And it is designed to help students who have struggled in the first semester of algebra as ninth graders. And there's nothing really more important than getting those credits in the beginning of your high school career. And all the research shows us that kids who pass English and math and get at least 4 credits in ninth grade are on track to graduate and graduate at a much higher rate than those kids that don't. So this program allows kids to come to school on Saturdays, do work, get their grade up to a passing grade, and then what the research from last year showed that kids really successfully completed the year. And then also that has long-term effect. The kids are going to be more prepared when they hit Algebra 2. So that is one of the things we put into this year's budget. Last year it was a pilot. This year we're really expanding that program.
Any other priorities for your budget for next year?
Not specific priorities, but our district and our building priorities here at the high school are really around building our academies. So as you know, we have several academies, and our goal is to expand them. We're adding another grade to that mix, and so that, of course, takes an effort and some money.
Great. Well, thank you very much for the information, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
All right.
Nice to be here.
Thank you for joining us today on MPS Pride. Just a reminder, a copy of the Superintendent's Proposed Budget for 2015-2016 can be found on our website, mpspride.org. We hope today's program has shed light on the areas of focus for the Manchester Public Schools and the funding plan for 2015-16. Thank you again for joining us.